Hi guys, welcome to the February class on how to paint loose watercolor florals. In this class, we are going to be using the following supplies. For the actual main composition that we are going to be doing at the end of this session, or towards the end of the session, the second half, we will be using the Legion Stonehenge Aqua Cold Press in 300 GSM. For the practice, I have decided to use, for practice meaning like for the swatching of colors and just kind of regular practice, I've decided to use the Canson Watercolor XL paper, which is a cold press, and it's 300 GSM again. For colors, we are using the following from my set of 36 White Nights. We're going to be using the Violet, which is right here. So we're using the violet, we're using the Indanthrene blue, we're going to be using some of the golden, cadmium red, which is right there, Payne's gray, which is right here, and then also raw sienna. So those are the 6 colors we're going to be mixing and exploring during this session. For brushes, we're using the 3 brushes from the Black Tulip Zen Art Supplies collection, and that is going to be the regular round 8, 10, and then also the the flat 8, not regular. Okay, I've got 2 little containers of water ready right there, and I also have some paper towel handy just in case I need to dab color off or dab excess water off. Alright, so we're going to start off by doing some of the color swatching right away. And if you're not aware exactly what our end goal is, this is what we're sort of looking to do right here. It's like a mini composition of this, or even this, which was actually the results from the live class. Alright, so we're going to first start off by mixing some colors, and then we're going to go into exploring how to paint a couple of different options, color variations for the tangerines, and then mixtures for the roses and the other florals and such. Alright, so let's start with our color swatching. So I'm just going to open up a sheet right here. And we're going to start the color swatching with using the flat number 8. So I've gone ahead and zoomed in. I have my palette ready. It's washed and clean. And we're going to start off by mixing some of the Indanthrene blue. And I have that on the side, and I'm going to show you exactly what that looks like on the palette right there. Just getting some water to kind of mix that in here. And typically you've got 2 ways of swatching and just kind of familiarizing yourself with these colors. You can either choose to get some damp in your sheet before you kind of go in with the color, or you can just go right away. I like to do both, a bit of both, and kind of warm up as well as we are going along. So I'm going to take the number 8, and I'm just going to lightly dampen this area. And then we're going in with the flat brush, and we're going to go ahead and start laying down this color. Alright, so as you are using this swatch, the swatching time to kind of explore the color, I need you to pay attention to also how the color is interacting with the water. Right now, the first set of color that I laid down, I had gotten the color by mixing it on my palette. The second time I went over this, I got the color directly from my color cake to kind of intensify it some more. And so it's gotten darker. So keep an eye on the color tones that you're able to get when you mix the color from your palette versus getting the color directly from your color cake. The next half of this, I would like to use the violet. So I'm just going to mix some of the violet. While I'm mixing the violet, please also have a quick note of how the color is blending into the water there. So sometimes we might want an effect like that, and so you need to familiarize yourself with things like that. So I'm just getting some of the violet, and I'm going to go ahead from here, pulling it in. And this will kind of give us an idea of how this color blends together with the indanthrene blue. Alright, so the violet is actually a very, very, very potent color. A little goes a long way. Same with the blue, I believe, but the violet is so strong. I like mixing it with either some blues or some reds to kind of get some nice hues. It's got a beautiful blend, so you might want to consider using this blend for the for some of your flowers or one of your flowers. And now we're going to move on to mixing. Let's see, we've got that. Oh yes, cadmium red. So let's get some of the cadmium red after we have washed off our brush nicely. Before I get the cadmium red right now, what I'm going to do is just take my flat brush and I'm going to dampen this whole area. Oh, there's a little bit of purple on there. Oh, it's okay. So dampen this whole area. And now I'm going in to get some of the cadmium red. I will get this red directly from the color cake. Show you guys how that works. It's the cadmium red right there. There we go. Just get a little bit of water on my brush. And now we're going in and painting this color down. Again, a beautiful, beautiful bright orange red. Right? And familiarize yourself with how dark it can get, how light it can get, and look at that beautiful blend it's giving you. The other half of this is going to be the golden. So I'm quickly washing off my brush because this is damp and I don't want to lose the dampness. I'm going to get some golden right away from my color cake and paint this on. And allow this color to mix in the center here so we can see exactly how this is working. Beautiful, right? Like even this is a beautiful blend. You can see it blending in the center here. These are great complementary colors. It's not my typical go-to colors for my regular work, but for this whole year pretty much, I've decided that every month each class will have a new set of colors, and this will just help us explore new ideas that we would not normally gravitate to, and also learn a bit more about color, right? All right, so the next thing I want to do is let's do a blend of, I shouldn't have washed off the golden. It would have been nice to do a blend of the golden along with the sienna. So we're going to do sienna first this time. And before I get the color, I'm going to go ahead and just dampen the area because I really like that effect. And then we're getting the raw sienna. So I'm just taking it directly from my palette. This color is a lot lighter, I find. Even when you get it directly from the cake like I just did, you can see how dark it gets. Here we go. This is my second lay of the color. Right? So that's what that looks like. We're going to go right away and get some of the golden to close up this rectangle. There we go. I am noticing some pooling happening over here, but that's probably because this part of the water kind of dried up maybe, and so the flow wasn't as smooth. Pooling also happens when you've got too much water sitting around on your sheet. So that's where the paper towel comes in handy. You just take your paper towel and dab it a little bit. In this case, we didn't really need any dabbing. It's now doing its thing. I don't think there was too excess water, but I think it was just a little bit too dry, perhaps. So these two color combinations would be great to have for the tangerines. So really, I think it's a preference if you want to do a darker tangerine or a more muted one. Again, I like to give you guys a choice and kind of explore what your preferences are as opposed to just copying me. So now we're going to move on to another color combination. We're going to mix in some of the indanthrine blue with the Payne's gray. But let's lay down some color so we can get some of the dampness, the paper dampness. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just roughly dampening this area using my flat brush. We're going to go in for some Payne's gray, which is right there. And then paint that in. I love to see the color kind of just explode on the sheet, especially when there is it's doing these little cauliflower effects that's happening. I think that's what it's called, cauliflowering. And that's the beauty of watercolor. I think this is the part when you visually see it is what makes watercolor so therapeutic and satisfying to look at, like when you see the explosion of color on the sheet. Alright, so the next half we are going with the blue. So I'm just wiping off my brush. I already have some blue on here, so I'm going to get some of that over here, and then also directly from the color cake. And let's close this in, guys. Now this this mixture can also happen with the violet, and that would also be very pretty. We're not going to do the violet though. I would encourage you to do it if you wish to do that. We're going to go ahead and mix some of the violet to get some other tones though. Violet with some other of the colors that we have on here. And I'm going to show you actually how to do a green for our composition. So those are the colors so far. I hope this is giving you an idea on which colors you want to use, which ones you're gravitating to, that sort of thing. So now we're going to go ahead and mix some colors to get the green. So for the greens, we're going to mix the raw sienna. So I'm going to get some raw sienna from the side. Getting it on my palette here. And get a little bit of water in there. And then we're going to take some of the indanthrine blue and mix that in here. And here's where I need you to pay attention. You can lighten or darken the green based on how much blue you add to your mixture. So I've added, the blue is a very strong color in comparison to the raw sienna, and so a little goes a long way in this mixture. So at this point, if you like a dark green to kind of offset the bright colors you have going on, I think it would work. But if you want it to be a lot lighter, I would just go in and add a little bit more of the raw sienna, and that should lighten things up. So here we go. I'm just going to put this green down so you can see what that looks like. Here we go. It's like this, I wouldn't say it's a wooded green, but it's more like a, I think what I would like to call a faded green, muted green rather. And I think this works very well with the colors that we have happening for the florals, the bright colors. Let's go ahead and do what I suggested previously. Let's add a little bit more of the raw sienna to our mixture, and let's see what we get. This is our time to be experimenting and kind of really exploring color to see the different results. So here you go. This is more, it almost kind of looks like an olivey kind of mixture. I'm getting more to kind of really make it potent. And at this point it's extra, it's got so much of that raw sienna that the green is more of a yellowy, olivey kind of tone. Although mind you, I feel like the olives are a tad bit brighter in their yellow, so this is again muted. Okay, so those are the two variations of greens that we can get using the indanthrene blue and raw sienna. There is another mixture that we can use to create some green, and that will involve mixing golden with the indanthrene blue. So let's mix some of that. I'm going to get some of the golden, mix it on here. Okay, and now washing this brush off because I don't want to contaminate the blue because it's dark and then sometimes you can't really see, especially while you're painting. So washing that off, getting some of the blue and mixing it on here. And there we go. Now we've got this richer green in comparison to what we had previously. Here's what that looks like. So it's very similar to what we got above. It's just more potent. And it's because the colors that we've used are a lot richer. Sorry, the yellow is a lot richer. So we're getting a richer tone here. Okay, so that's that. This is a nice bright green. So we could almost use these for our fluffing or feathering that we, as I like to call it, for the lighter looking leaves in the background. And then these can be the foreground. These can just be slight hints here and there. And I'm going to make a note of these all around, and you will get the image reference of this color chart. So you can decide for yourself which colors you want to use where. Let's see, we are also looking to get some mixtures to get some beautiful mauve tones. And so for that, we're going to mix some of the cadmium red with the violet. So I'm going to get some of the cadmium red and mix it on my palette really quickly. And I'm just going to shave off some of the violet here and add it in, instead of getting some from the color cake. So again, it depends on the ratios that you're using for the mixture. So if you're using more of the violet, you'll get more of a winey color. If you're using more of the red, it goes more towards the reddish tone. And let's do that here, down below. So we've got this winish, muted mauve. I'm going to add more of the violet and let's see what that looks like. And these also make a beautiful, beautiful color for flowers if you're looking for something, if your preference is more of a muted look. And you can just see the greens with this color would go beautifully. Here's when you add more violet to your mix. This is what happens. Okay, so we've got these two variations, and then the next one I want to do is, I'm just trying to make it slightly darker. And then the next one we can do is violet and Payne's gray. Now some of the other greenery that you can do involves Payne's gray along with either violet or the blue, and it'll give you this darker color. So what I'm going to do is let's mix some of the Payne's gray right here, and I'm going to take some of the violet, as I mentioned, and mix that in. I don't think we need any more violet. Let's take a little bit more Payne's gray so you can see exactly what you get. And again, you're getting this nice darker hue of purple. You can see the different variations of purple we're getting. So here we go, Payne's gray. And as you're doing these swatches, I encourage you to use the mini workbook that I have that comes with this course to kind of note down what you're mixing, just as a reference that you can attach to your end result compositions by the end of this class. This way, when you're looking back and you want to recreate something, you've got a breadcrumb trail, so to speak. Okay, so just keep that in mind. There we go, we've got like a nice darker hue. This is also something you can use for your leaves, as I mentioned. We'll do the black and blue version, the Payne's gray and blue version of that right above there so you can see. Wiping off the excess color here. One last combination before we move into the Payne's gray and blue, while we're still mixing violet, I want to mix the golden with violet. So here's golden. And we're adding some violet to it now. And you get another version. You can either get a brown. This is a brown. Let's swatch this here so you can see. So you get like this brown. And if you add more of the violet to this, you can get a purple. Another variation of purple. Or mauve, sorry. I think mauve would be more accurate because we are using the violet to kind of get all these tones in. So I'm going to get some more of that, mix it in, and here we go. This is again keeping a quick reminder. It all depends on how much the ratios of the color that you're mixing. So if you mix more of the violet, you're getting this beautiful violet, mauvey violet. And if you like muted tones in your paintings, which also this would make a beautiful romantic looking composition if we use this for florals and leaves and such. However, we are going to be including the bright colors as well. But this is to show you guys exactly what you can get from mixing colors. Okay, so we're almost finished with the swatching. I am now going to swatch the last thing that we said I would, which is the Payne's gray. And the Indanthrene blue. Too much Payne's gray, so I'm going to get some more of that. Sorry, too much Indanthrene blue, so I got more of that Payne's gray. And look at this, we have like an indigo happening. Like this nice dark midnight, almost like a midnight blue. Okay, so here's all the colors that we have swatched. Alright, so I've flipped over a new page on my Canson sheet, and we are now going to start off with our practice. So the first thing we're going to start off practicing is going to be our tangerines. And so let me find my sheet really quickly so I can show you what we've done. So I really liked the idea of having the cadmium red and then the golden for my tangerines because I love them bright, and then just going more muted for the main blooms. However, you can also go the other way around. So remember when I said, where's my sheet, that you can have two different variations of tangerines. You can have your muted ones where it has raw sienna and golden, or cadmium red and golden. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to try them both and get some practice in. I'm using my number 10 round, and I'm going to go ahead and mix some of my, let's use some of the raw sienna bit first. So I'm going with raw sienna, and directly I'm going to start painting this on. So we want to do like an arc shape. So we'll do our first tangerine here, pressing down, trailing this way, and then I'm dipping the tip of my brush in water, and I'm going to close up this tangerine by creating the next arc on this side. And now getting some of my golden from my palette, it's a little bit muddy, I'm going to go ahead and just press that down and allow it to kind of mix into the raw sienna that we have in there. And I'm leaving that little bit of a open space at the top, and that's going to be the area where we get our stem with the leaf. Also notice I'm leaving a lot of white space in between. It's fairly oval, the shape of this tangerine, and you can always go back in if you want it to be more orangey in certain areas. Like I prefer the left hand side to keep that orange dark hue happening there, and then a little bit at the bottom, and then leaving the rest fairly light. Okay, so there's one way of doing it. Let's do it again, and this time let's kind of get, I'm going to wash my brush, and we're going to start off with the cadmium red this time. So I'm getting some of my color from there, and we're going to paint this maybe this way. So here's my first, dipping the tip of my brush in water. I'm going to quickly create the next side, and then directly using the same brush I'm going to get some of my golden and add that in there. Notice again the strokes are very loose, so you just want to loosely create this shape, hinting that it's a tangerine. The color and the mixing should really be what lets people know, oh, okay, this is a tangerine. You might want to go in and just kind of perfect the shape if needed, or if you want to add more of the red as well to kind of highlight those areas that I had mentioned earlier. Now is the time while it is still damp. Okay, so something like that. And let's do it a third time. And so for this third one now, let's start off with doing it, painting the golden first. So I'm getting golden directly on my brush, and I'm going to swipe down, dipping the tip of the brush in water. I'm going to go ahead and swipe down on this side. Getting some of the cadmium red, I'm going to go ahead and just paint this in. So I really encourage you to try these different mixing techniques, laying down one color first, laying down the next. I hope you're doing this with me as we are going along, actually, because that's the whole point of the class, for you to kind of explore what works and what doesn't. And yeah, I kind of like this one as well. This also looks fairly nice. Just perfecting that shape. Sometimes it's something that we just want to do because it's something that would bother us typically. Great. So now we've got 3 different variations, and again, like I mentioned previously, we don't have to super hone in on how skilled we are in terms of painting these. As long as we've got our mixtures correct, we know exactly what we want. Look how loose and simply these are laid down on here. So you want to keep that in mind. So don't stress out too much about this. Just get your color mixing in the way you like it. And then also don't forget, we want to focus in on the white space in between to kind of really, that's the whole point of this lesson. We want white space in almost everything that we paint. Okay, so there's our 3 tangerines. We're now going to move on to doing some of the roses. I feel the roses take up most of this class. And so let's just get started with the roses. So I'm going to keep on using the number 10. And we'll start off by dampening the sheet. This is what we kind of focused on for the first, for January's class. And what I'm doing is I'm just very roughly dampening my sheet here in an circular shape, and kind of leaving white space in between as well. And then once that's done, I'm going to use some leftover color that we have here on my palette, and we're going to create our rose. So the rose, we're starting with the center and doing these little arc shapes. And as we go around, we're pressing down on our brush to really get a thick lay of color. And you can see how it's kind of really blending into the sheet. And that's because we have dampened the sheet first. And now this rose is just kind of facing upwards, so we don't really have it facing sideways or anything. That's why it's just smack dab in the middle is where the center is. And we're just kind of doing these arc shapes in and around. I'm going to do a quick little sketch to show you exactly the thinking behind this here, so you have an idea. The center, you start by holding your brush on the tip, so like 90 degrees, to kind of really get that thin little arc shapes in there, and this is what that looks like. So you do a C, and then you do a C on top, kind of curving in. Then you do another one closing up this area, another one closing up there. And this is typically how you would kind of go ahead and make your strokes for your roses. Okay, that's the pattern. Now this is not fully dried, so what I'm going to do is, taking some of the darker hue of purple, I'm going to go in and do my light little strokes again, using just the tip of my brush to get this nice thin detail for the rose. And the more we get on the outskirts, the more I'm going to press down on my brush to get a thicker stroke. And then also what I want to do is get a lighter hue of the color. So I'm actually going to use the, just dip the tip of my brush in water and then come back and create these loose strokes all around. That is the idea for the rose. So you go from dark in the center to light on the outside, okay? So let's try this a couple more times. And then if you guys need to try it some more, I'd suggest pausing the video and just trying some more. Okay. I'm just adding a little bit more detail to the center, because typically what you can do with this style is you can add as much detail as you want. Just remember, do not lose your white space. There's a lot of white space happening there, because that's what really makes it a rose and really kind of enhances things. Okay, fluffing around. Okay, so we'll now move on to doing the same thing that we just did. I'm just going to focus in more on my sheet so you can see it closely. So for this the second rose that we're practicing, let's use the blue, the Indanthrine blue. And what I will do this time, instead of just going with water, I'm getting a little bit of the blue on my brush. I'm dipping my brush in water, and I'm going to go right away and create this do the strokes that create a rose using this bit of water that I have here. Dipping the tip of my brush in water again just to get a lighter version of this blue. I am continuing to go all the way around to create my rose. Okay. So we allow this to kind of dry up just a little bit. Some of my centers have a little too much water, so I'm kind of moving it all around. And then once we've done that, we're going in with a darker version of this blue, or maybe even some of the purple. And we're going to do the exact same thing that we kind of did here, again here, okay? So let's get some of this purple that I have here. And I'm going to go ahead and add those little strokes that I explained to you in my drawing. And I'm allowing this color to kind of really seep into my rose, giving me a really pretty two-toned rose. Now areas like that, if you want to smoothen it out, just get some water on your brush and smoothen it out. Or take a second brush and that'll help you smoothen out any hard-edged curves. Like those are pretty hard-edged. I didn't really take a brush to sort of smoothen it out, and so we're stuck with that. And that's okay. I'm fine with that. Trying not to cover this drawing up. I'll do a better drawing somewhere else in case people want this as a reference. Or maybe just watch this video and make sure you're doing that little bit of a drawing in your workbook as a reference for yourself, actually. So we'll allow this. I think most of this is dried up. Now we're going to go in for a third time and get a darker hue happening. So I've got some of that indanthrene blue mixed with Payne's gray here. I'm just going to get that on the tip of this brush. It's got a beautiful fine tip. That's why I recommended this brush set for beginners. And we're doing the same thing again. I'm just going to dab my brush onto my paper towel because it feels like there's too much water still. I literally just want paint to kind of enhance these areas here for my rose. So doing the rose might take a couple of different tries, or several tries really, just to kind of see where you want to place things, where you feel you need to stop, because you can keep on making these frills till kingdom come and your rose will be massively huge. So sometimes a little goes a long way, and I would, if you're just starting out, roses are hard for you, I would typically focus just on the center, just like that, and then kind of allowing the outside to just be in faded, muted tones. Okay, so I wanted this to be a lot darker so we didn't have to go in a fourth time, but it looks like there was too much water when I first put in the blue, so I'm going to have to get some color directly from my color cakes and really go in here and add that in. Make sure when you're doing these that you're not losing white space. So do not paint over the white space that you've so intentionally left in there. There we go. Almost done. So give this a couple of tries before you are ready to kind of do your own rose. It's literally all about doing your C strokes and making sure that it is formed in the shape of a rose sort of thing. And yes, it'll take a couple of tries. I do not want you to get discouraged. And it doesn't have to look exactly like mine. All right, so there's our second one. Let's do it one more time. And then this time, you know what? If you felt like these were a little bit too heavy and you're just starting out on roses, let's simplify this process and make it even easier. So here's my third way that you can do these roses, just keeping things extra loose. So we're gonna start off actually with just color on the brush. So let's make this rose the cadmium red. So I got some cadmium red directly onto my color cake here, and I'm gonna go ahead and, before I start painting, I'm gonna keep my number 8 handy, keep it damp and ready, and I'm gonna start by creating that little painting idea there, or drawing. And then dipping the tip of my brush, I'm gonna go outward and create more shapes. And then immediately we're going in with the number 8. And we are dampening these areas where we've just laid down this color. Notice the white space we're leaving. That is important. This the shape of the rose is kind of getting slightly off because we've got this rose sitting right next to it. And that's okay, because that'll happen in your composition. If you want to do like a two-tone something happening here, you can get a little bit of the golden and just to add that to the center, or just in certain areas that are damp, and allow it to kind of seep and do its thing. So I've got a little bit of that golden in there. And there we go, we've got another rose. So we've got 3 roses, and if you want to practice it some more, you can absolutely stop this and go ahead and get a little bit more practice in before we start our next practice, which is going to be the thin flame-like florals. Petaled florals. Okay. For these next florals, we're going to use the number 8, and again, feel free to use the leftover colors that you may have on your palette if you wish. We're literally just practicing strokes to make sure we get things correct before we move on. So for these, I will use my violet, and the idea with these is to kind of just use the tip of your brush, press down, and then trail off on the tip, and that's how you get the thin, thick, thin strokes, almost like little fire flames. You can start from the inside of the flower or from the outside in, depending on how you're painting it. Let's just pretend this flower is sideways. So I'm going to start from the outside in, so outside, pressing down, trailing off to the center, dipping the tip of my brush in water because it's giving me that dry side effect here. So I'm going to do this. Let's do another one happening this way, and kind of take the tips and kind of give them some flair. Let's do another one here. Typically we want to keep white space in between, guys, especially if you're using 2 strokes to create these. So keep that in mind, and keep dipping the tip of your brush in water every time you finish a stroke, and this is what will get you some nice variations of tonal hues happening. And then, so we've done our front facing petals, our foreground petals is what I meant to say. Now what we want to do is we want to do our background petals, which are peeping in between here. And so for those, we want to make sure that our color is super light. So again, dipping some more in the water, and then we go in there and just kind of lightly, using the V that's happening, just lightly add mini strokes. In between. And again, these, if you've never done these before, it's all about getting used to the brush, you know, using the tip, pressing down, trailing off, that sort of thing. What I would suggest is practice, 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 practice until you get this singular motion correct. You will not be able to repeat it and get this full looking flower. So if you feel like you need practice, go ahead. Do it a couple more times. I'm getting some darker hues to kind of just overlap here. Create some visual interest by just getting another variation of purple. And this is how you can kind of overlap on it and create these to kind of make it look fuller. This is an additional step I didn't plan to show, but I'm just doing it because I felt like doing it on a whim. But you don't have to do it this way. We could just end off without the overlapping strokes. So let's do this again. So this is a side flower, right? So let's do this again, and we'll do it in the center this time, so facing upward. And I am going to mix a little bit of my indanthrene blue with my purple. I think this was it right there, or maybe that was Payne's gray with purple. I can't quite remember. So here we go, got that. The ratio of color to water for this, because we're doing it light, is about 30-70, I would say. We don't want it to be too dark. I think the darkest things in our composition should be the tangerines, and everything else should be fairly light in terms of opacity. All right, so let's do this in a circular fashion. If you feel like you're not sure if you can get it perfectly in a circle, I would suggest doing a light, making sure that you've got enough dampness on your brush, just kind of lightly going all the way around, leaving white space in the center, and then from outside trailing in. Dipping the tip of your brush in water, doing the same thing all the way around. Pulling down from the area that you've just painted in, or even from outside in. You want to highlight the center, just go in with a darker color and just do that. But we want to get to the centers before it dries up. Try to, at least, okay? If it's not wholly possible, that's okay. Sometimes we take a little extra time perfecting things. And the thing with loose style of floral painting is you cannot nitpick over things for too long. Otherwise, you lose that window of where you can go in and create or paint, and then it's dried up. So that's typically how you would do this flower facing upward. We still have to add the little petals in between. Before we do that, I'm just adding a darker hue of purple to the center, and this is how you get that dark to light effect. Typically, most florals will have the dark to light effect, especially when it is a loose style, because that's what gives your flower more structure. Okay, so what I did there was just go in with a darker purple and just highlighted the center even more, make it pop. So now I'm going back to get a lighter color, slightly lighter than these petals here, so we can go in between and paint these in. If it's easier for you to start from the V and then go up, I would suggest to go with that route. We all paint slightly differently, so our comfort levels are also different. So I would encourage you to try a few different ways till you find what works best for you. So again, practice this a couple of more times if you feel like you need to. Hit that pause button and just take a sheet if you want to and just practice a whole bunch of these. You can add some more if you want to really fluff this up and make it look like maybe a dahlia, for instance. All right, so there we go. That's how we can simply do a flower that looks like this. Let's do one more for the sake of practice on sideways again, and this time I'll make it face this way. I don't have a lot of space to work with, but I'm going to try my best to have it fit there. So I'm just taking, again, leftover color that I have, and I am going to move my sheet over ever so slightly and start painting petals. Now, I would like to have white space in between each petal as well, but because of the angle that I'm sitting in and the camera recording, I'm not able to quite get the details, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit by going and adding an additional line to indicate that. So same idea. Dipping the tip of my brush in water so I can kind of go sideways. Sorry, go lighter, not go sideways. I am going sideways for this flower, but I meant to say dipping the tip of my brush in water to get a lighter tone. And then finally, we want to do the petals in between. I'm actually just going to do a very kind of smaller one. So notice how these are smaller on the very edge, and then as they kind of fan out, it gets taller. So keep that in mind as well. This is all giving our petals or a flower a shape. Now this is a lot darker than what we used, so I'm just going to dip the brush in water and go ahead and kind of continue painting this. If we've got one slightly darker, it's okay. Like, it doesn't break the whole composition. Okay, there we go. So feel free to practice this some more if you feel like you need to. We're now going to move on to leaves. And leaves are fairly simple if you've done January, and if you've been doing my YouTube watercolor classes. I've got a ton of stuff on leaves. I've also got a ton on roses and florals like this. But again, leaves, I think we do it all the time in almost every composition. So I'm using leftover green, and we'll start by doing the leaves first by adding a stem here, and then I'll show you how we're going to do the leaves. So I am going to give this a bottom, one of those V cup bottoms, I don't know what they're called. And then let's give it a stem. And then from here, we are going to create leaves. So giving it another stem right there. And then using the tip of my brush, pressing down, trailing inward. I'm going to dip the tip of my brush in water and do the same thing on the other side. And there you go. We've got a leaf. Let's do another tinier one here. I'm leaving white space on the inside and the center. This is these are neat, easy leaves. The looser ones, as you kind of really practice and keep going, you kind of get this effect if you just keep on giving it shape and leaving space in between. And then as you're kind of feathering out with these leaves, what I like to do is add a couple of like strokes like this that kind of make it look like they're floating leaves without really giving it, okay, I gave it a stem here, but typically I would just do something like that or something like this, just really giving it that loose feel. And these are the elements that you would want to go lighter in your strokes of green, so kind of like that. And we'll do these a couple of times as well before we move on. Kind of mess this area up, but let's do it again. Let's do some leaves. So getting some green. Leaves are all about using the tip. Actually, let's do a stem. Using the tip, pressing down, trailing off. Getting some water on the tip of my brush. I get a little bit of a different variation color. I didn't get some white space in here. That's okay. And it's just, again, we're using arc shapes to create these leaves. And these are exactly the kind of shapes we've done to create the roses, and then also to kind of create the petals in these flowers right there. So you're going to notice a lot of repetition, and once you get these strokes down, trying to paint some of these other things kind of really come easier. So I'm going to create some more here. Just kind of practice these leaves. Practice adding your little tendril-like elements, you know, like adding strokes like that, kind of adding little tendrils like that peeking out. Like really going over your leaves. Like even that one stroke, that's a great leaf. Now this is really going loose, right? Like you're really going loose at this point because you're literally just doing one stroke and allowing the water to just settle, water and color to just settle. Do another one here. There we go. So here's how we do the leaves. And just to give you an idea, visually what we're aiming to do is things like this, right? And here's another one. Here we go. Right, these are the overlapping that I was telling you about, where we could do the main darker ones in the forefront, and then towards the end we can fluff it out with the lighter versions happening like that all around, and give it that nice fluffy look. So I've mixed a little bit more of the Indanthrene blue and Payne's gray for this next set of leaves. Now what I want to focus in on is when you've laid down your leaves, how you can get some nice dark not highlights but shadows, and this is the perfect example right here. So you lay down your leaves, you paint them down, and then immediately using the tip of your brush get some darker tone and just kind of go in while it is damp so you can get that nice gradient effect. So let's get our basic leaves down first and get some more practice in for leaves, and their stems. Okay, I had to change the battery there really quickly. So creating the leaves again, so you can just do like one swoosh if you want, dipping the tip of my brush in water. I'm going to do the next half of this leaf and really direct it down to the stem, and have another leaf kind of maybe twirling out this way. When you're doing this style, to give your give your artwork more movement, instead of just doing your leaves stoic and straight, you want to give it some curvature. And this is what makes your painting dance, almost. So, adding this in. And now, like I mentioned, we're going to get a little bit more of that darker hue and just add it in the areas where these are touching the stems. Now this area dried up already, but these areas are still damp, so I am adding that darker hue here. And you can see how it kind of really adds some depth to your leaves, right? And then I think as we progress, I'll show you guys how to give your leaves more detail by going in after and adding additional strokes here and there. But this is the whole idea for leaves. So again, if you feel like you need to practice this some more, please pause the video and go for it and just practice these elements. I'll just do one more set and then we can begin our composition. So let's see, let's do one coming down this way. There we go. There's my little tendril-like thing happening. Let's do one here. Dipping the tip of my brush in water, I'm just kind of adding more elements to kind of really lightly have it dance outward almost. There I'm going in with a slightly darker hue of color and I'm just highlighting these areas here so that they stand out a bit more. There we go. And literally this is how you do leaves, literally. I feel like that word I use a lot. So practice these strokes, guys. So let's have a stem. Practice that. Practice this. You know, just like one swoop. Practice those in and you will be so much happier, so much more happier? So much happier. Wow, I feel like I'm losing my ability to speak properly. When it comes to painting leaves on a looser scale, it'll be more natural as opposed to forced. So keep practicing this in and then we are going to progress into doing our composition. Okay, so we're now ready to finally start our mini composition. And I have my Legion Stonehenge watercolor paper here and pretty much all the supplies that we've been using thus far. And we're going to start off by creating our main floral in the center and then perhaps another one peeking out from down below and then our little, what was it? Where's my sheet? The flamey flowers that I showed you guys, the second floral. That almost look like dahlias. And then we'll go into leaves and then we'll do our little buds on the side. Oh, let's not forget tangerines. We got to do the tangerines after we do the flowers, okay? So let's start that off. All right, first things first, I am going to get some color mixed. I've got, let's move this over so you can see. I'm going to use a combination of the violet and the indanthrine blue to create this rose, and I'll be using the number 8 dominantly, and I'll be using the number 10 to kind of dampen the area and all that good stuff. Okay, so let me just mix a little bit of that color on here and then we're ready to start. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with the number 10. And I really liked, out of all the techniques I showed you guys, I really liked the idea of getting some of the hue on my brush and then kind of painting it in and then going in with this and smoothing or darkening it out. So I'm getting some of that on here, making sure it's nice and watered down, and we're just going to start doing our little arc shapes, leaving a lot of white space, because that is the whole idea here, guys. This exercise, heavy as it is, I'm giving you a lot of information. However, what it's meant to do is really get you used to the importance of watercolor, the importance of white space in loose watercolor. Okay, so I've roughly kind of painted this in. I've left a lot of white space, and sometimes, guys, the white space could just be the lightest color that you've just added onto the sheet. Like if this color were to be this whole area. Okay, so this is a decent enough shape of a rose. And now I'm going in with this brush and I'm going to get a more dominantly opaque, more of an opaque hue. And we're going in and adding our tiny little strokes. And you can see right away it's giving us this beautiful blend, right? And then as we go outward, I'm just going to get some more water onto my brush so I can really press down and get a more muted stroke in. I'm just adding a couple of frilly strokes on the edge here, which have a lot more white space. Perfect, so I'm going to leave this as is, and now I will add a little bit more of the purple. Actually, that's not what I was going to say. I'm going to add a little bit of the cadmium red light into this and get me that mauvey color for my next rose. Okay, and so I'm just going to use the 10 again and do the same thing that we've done. And what I'm trying to do is get this while it's still damp. I'm going to position it kind of over here. This rose I am doing more like the third rose that we did, which is where we started off with the center details and then kind of really spaced it out with watered down color and then smoothened it out as well. And I also want this rose to be a lot smaller, so I'm not going to keep on faffing around with it. So just adding my darker hue right now while this area is still damp. Notice the white space, guys. Keep noticing the white space because that is so integral. And then for areas like this where I want to really smoothen it out, taking the 10, and I am with water, I'm just kind of creating these loose arc-shaped strokes here, trying to smoothen it out so we have a nice dark to light effect as opposed to just a hard stroke edge. I'm getting some more of that color in here. I mixed a little bit more of the color, and I'm getting it more on this edge here to kind of sort of indicate that, okay, that's more of the shadowy bit where it touches the other rose. Now this hue is a tad different, so I'm going to mix in a little bit more of the violet. You're not always going to be able to get the exact same tones, guys, and so That's something to also keep in mind. And that's why it's integral and important that you understand how the colors blend, because they need to complement one another and they need to blend in as a whole. Okay, all right, just gonna do some on the outskirts and then we'll end these roses. So I'm going to allow this rose to dry a bit before we do anything else to it. The center at least. I just want to add more of a shape on the outskirts here so that it doesn't quite look too abrupt or off kilter. Adding a little bit of additional tiny strokes here and there just to kind of give it that loosey feel. Perfect. And now we can move on to doing our dahlia type rose flowers. So I'm washing off my brush, and for this flower I think it is best if we use, we're going to be using, let's use the cadmium red on a lighter scale. I'm also going to get some of that golden and mix it on here, so we can fluctuate between the two as we're painting. So let's do one flower coming out on this end here. Yeah, no, let's make it at the top, because then maybe we can have a tangerine here. So I'm going to move this down and have my first petal coming down this way, dipping the tip of my brush in water. Create the next one, dipping the tip of my brush in water again, creating another one here, and keep on doing this. I am kind of snaking my stroke, almost like an S shape, C shape, different kinds of shapes to kind of really make it nice and wriggly, give it some nice movement. Now we want to do the strokes for the center or in between, so I'm just going to do that. And what I'm doing is, as I'm creating these center strokes, I am making sure that I am adding a darker hue of this color tone at the bottom areas here, so that it seeps in and gives us that dark to light. So do not forget that. And then let's just do it in this side here. Perfect, and I'm getting a little bit of that darker hue as I mentioned. I'm going to add that in here in these areas so it looks like it's coming down from the center. This one's a little bit dried, so it's not blending as well. But maybe I can just go over it this way and kind of have it blend in. And I'm just fluffing up the rest. And then these ones over here, I'm just adding very loosey strokes to kind of indicate that it's there, but it's like off in the background. Okay, so that's perfect. I'm not going to do anything else to this. These are good as is. We're going to go ahead and create a little bit more of that happening here on this end. And for that, I will use more of the golden. So I'm getting some of my golden onto my palette, and we'll do this one facing upward. So starting off over here. And the more you do these, guys, the easier and more fluid you'll become in your strokes, and you'll notice like you don't need, like I didn't start off with doing the center, but here, let's do the center just so that you guys are doing this along with me and you're able to kind of section this off properly without making it look weird. So here we go. So notice the strokes that I'm doing now are very much so like the strokes we do for the leaves. I'm going to get a little bit of the cadmium red, mix it in with that orange, the golden, and add that to the center here. Allow it to seep in, give us a nice beautiful blend. Maybe even add it in certain areas where it's still damp. Kind of highlight this color. I'm just dipping the tip of my brush in water now, and we're going to add a couple more of these strokes in and around, in between, sorry, this flower, right? Just like that, and pushing down the main color. Okay, just like that. So getting a little bit more of that darker orange, the red, cadmium red light. I'm adding more of that into the center. Give it more of a pop. Okay, so it's nice and pretty. Love it. I'm going to go ahead and do, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do one more. And this one will be more of the center color just so it stands out more, and we'll position that happening this way. Actually, let's position it downward. So I'm going to flip this over and just kind of have this going downward. Same idea that we did at the top here. So it'll look like this going downward, just on a smaller scale, guys. I just want it to be like it's peeking out from underneath. So very loosey strokes. We won't be as detailed with the amount of strokes that we're doing like we were with the one at the top. Literally just kind of adding this as a shape, as a shaper almost, giving the rose a shape. And then if you want to add that dark bit to the center or to the bottom here, that works. And that's it, really. We don't really need to do anything else. The whole idea was just to kind of give it that more fuller look, like it's coming out from the side, and that's it. I'm just going to smoothen out this guy here. Oh, don't forget, if you want to just add like tiny little strokes like that here and there to kind of make it look more loose, or little dots, that works and helps as well. Even add that. In between here, just kind of giving it more shape, sorry, more definition. And then doing the little dots like I mentioned. If this seems too advanced for you, the whole dotted, you're not quite sure how to do that, you're not comfortable yet, don't worry, just skip this step and move on. but I like to do these things throughout just so that you get into the habit of doing these things from the start, and you're keeping this in mind if you are keen on learning this style of painting. All right, okay, so we have this happening right now, and now we can go in and create some tangerines. So for the tangerines, I would, my favorite was adding the cadmium red and then the golden and getting that nice potent color happening. So let's do that. I'm going to start off by getting some color directly from my palette, color cake. And I don't want the tangerines to be too big, so I will make sure that they're not. So let's start off by doing a tangerine at the top on this angle here. And I don't want it touching the rose exactly. It could just be peeking. Actually, it would be touching the rose because it would be peeking from behind the rose. So let's do this, and I'm going to shape it. Let's leave this as the white space here. And another thing there. Now getting the tip of my brush into my orange or the golden, I'm going to go ahead and paint the rest of this in. So I'm pushing all this color off to the side. So that's where it can look like the shadow is on this side here. Perfect. I like how that looks. I like that hint of orange. We're going to move that into the red area too. Great. Now we're going to do a similar concept down below here. So let me just down over here. So getting some of the golden this time, I'm going to flip it and we're going to paint that this direction, this way. Remember the white space. And I'm getting some of the cadmium red and I'm smoothing it and then swishing it across the bottom as well to kind of maybe hints of it on this side. Predominantly there and at the bottom. Okay, so we've got that one there. Let's do one more over here by this flower. I love these colors together. I think they look stunning. And I kind of like how this has transitioned off on this side, like the dry stroke. So I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to add more of that cadmium red down to the bottom. And just a little bit at the top here. Perfect, and I'll leave it as is. So we've left the centers open as well, just so we can go in and add some greenery. Or I've left the centers open. You don't have to if you don't want to. That one's like really dark. So let me just do this just to make sure that the one at the top doesn't look too out of sorts. I want to paint that one in so it doesn't look like they all have that. Okay, great. So this is what that looks like. This is what that looks like over here. I'm going to zoom out now so we can now go into doing the leaves. Alright, so for the leaves now, I am going to blend in my favorite, which is the golden and the indanthrine blue to get that nice green that I really like. And we are now, I'm going to be using the number 10. And you can always use the number 8 if you prefer that. I'll use the number 10 to begin with. And we'll start off by creating some nice stems happening at the bottom here. So I've got a little bit of a boo-boo here. So what I'm going to do is have one stroke come out here so I can cover this up nicely and paint that leaf in there. Then do a loosey stroke there, then dipping the tip of my brush in water. I'm going to get another leaf happening here. Pushing all the color down to the center. I'll do another one here. And just have it extending. Getting that darker tone to kind of highlight these areas right now would be a good idea. And let's see, one big leaf over here, just to kind of end that off. Okay, so we've got some there. Let's have one starting here, pushing all the color down to where the flower is. Adding little cutesy little elements or strokes just like that so it looks like it's fuller. I'm mixing a little bit more blue into my color to get this lighter tone. And so we've got one here. I want to do one more. So I'm just going to think, let's do one here. So I'm just kind of adding additional tiny strokes with this new green to kind of fluff up the area. Adding a little bit of that darker tone. That area is dried already, so that's okay. So let's add some more in here at the top. Just going to add a couple of strokes to kind of indicate that this is happening with the flower, and it is sideways, but it's kind of behind the rose. And then we can have some leaves happening this direction. Very simply, very loose. Notice the white space as well. The darkest color should be closest to the flowers, and so I'm going back in and just adding more of that darker green there. And then the more outward the greenery spreads, the lighter the color and the fainter the detail. I'm just adding some greenery in between here. I'm going to keep this very open-ended because at the end I want to come and survey and then decide exactly how much I want happening in between those two roses. Let's get a little more of that color mixed up to get another shade happening. Okay, so the next area I would say we can do some greens is just add a couple of details here in between. And this, what happens when you do something like this is you're bumping up the flower and you're kind of lifting it off the sheet almost. You don't have to paint the whole thing in, you could just show and indicate that there's greenery in the back. And so let me just, since I have this color almost perfect, let me just kind of add this detail in here and there. I'm kind of like really deciding where I want this to go, so that it helps shape everything. So you can have some there, which means there could be some leaves happening at the top here. So let's just do something like that. So notice again, I'm leaving a lot of white space, but I'm kind of filling up the areas to kind of really indicate a lot of greenery and indicate also lots of movement. So I'm going light on these areas here because I don't want to make it look too top heavy, but I do want to make it seem like it is a nice big bunch of florals or leaves. So I'm just taking off some of the color because I don't want it to dry off too dark either. Sometimes this can be hard to stop, guys, so be warned. I'm warning you from now. Details like this can be really unnerving. Okay, so I've got that. I probably should have gone shorter on this side, but that's okay. We're gonna do a couple more of these. This. Let's do some leaves over here on this end. That's good enough. I'll add a little bit of greenery happening here as well at the bottom. And we do want these to indicate green. the oranges. So I'm mixing a little bit more blue to get a darker green, so these leaves stand out just a little bit more than the rest. Painting that in almost. Okay, and then for the top one, I'm just gonna have this leaf protruding from here. I'm trying to give this additional fluff and movement. So just adding a couple of strokes. Okay, that's quite pretty and nice. I'm gonna add some more. At the top, just mixing a little more color on the side here. There we go. Okay, so that's great. We've got our oranges, we've got our leaves, we've got our flowers. Let's add some of the darker leaves. Remember, I was talking about adding Payne's gray, mixing it in with some of the blue or the violet, and then just getting some different hues for the leaves. Actually, before we do that, let us use the number 8 to create some little berry elements, and those are going to be super easy and fun to do. Let's make them the blue. So I'm going to make them the blue color because it'll be a nice pop. So I'm going to have this blue handy, and I am going to keep my number 10 brush handy with just water, and you'll see why. So let's talk about placement. Let's have some protruding from here, so we have a nice diagonal. And so for that, let me just swatch this, turn this around, and we'll paint this kind of falling outward. So I think the best course of action, so you know where to place things, is to go ahead and add your green stem first. So I'm actually using the 10 to add some stems. So there's one, that's another, and we're just going to add tiny little strokes, just like how we add the leaves. And then as we're going downward, we're tapering off. And then dip the tip of the number 8 in water. And we want to go back and add more strokes next to the strokes we've just laid down, in hopes that it'll blend in and we'll get lighter versions of what we've just painted. Okay, so something just like that. Then going back with your thicker brush that has the green, we're just going to add a couple of green strokes. And the reason we're doing this is so that the areas that are still damp with the blue will blend in and give us a nice blend of colors, really. And because this is an area where it's It's tiny, and you can see there's the oranges are right there. I'm just going to add a couple more of these blue strokes coming out from here, so it looks like it's really full up in there. And then just tinier little points or dots, whatever, tapering off to the edges. And then one last thing. Areas that are still dark, go in with a darker blue and just kind of add dark. Areas that are still damp, just go in with the darker blue and just add a couple of dots here and there. This to give it a little bit of pop. Especially in this area here where it is connecting. The oranges, there we go, perfect. So I like how that's turned out. Cute little spray of berries or florals or whatever you want to call it. Let's do something similar at the top somewhere. So I am going to select this area right here. I know it's blue and this is purpley-ish already, but let's go for that area, because I think this area is already heavy enough. So getting some of my green first, we are going to add our strokes of stems, rather, not strokes, stems. And then going in and adding the blue. I'm going to get some darker blue, just add that in there. I'm doing the opposite of what I did at the bottom. Oh, let's just get a little bit more happening here. And you want things to sort of taper off. So I'm going to wash off most of what's on my number 10. Actually, you should just use the number 8 really. And just add a couple of strokes to in the vicinity of the berries or the florals that are still damp, and allow us to get a nice blend of different hues of blue, because now we go from dark to light, right? And then whatever's left over, you're just kind of adding a couple of dots in a direction. Okay, all right, so now finally I'm going to get some more green, like I mentioned previously, just to get some of these areas nice and damp, getting some green blending in with the blues as well. Nothing crazy, but just a little bit. There we go. Perfect. So that is what we have, and now we are going to get into adding more detail to our roses. And then after we add detail to our roses, that's when we're going to go ahead and add our final little the darker leaves. Okay, so we're going to start off with doing the purple floral right there. Actually, no, we're going to start off with doing this guy right there, and I've already mixed some color. I've mixed a combination of the violet and the indanthrine blue, and so we're repeating what we did here to get the roses. And I'm going to keep the number 10 handy just in case I need to smoothen out any details. Now the key to this is we need to make sure we're not overdoing it. So adding tiny details, yes. Making sure we're not closing up any of the spacing. The white spacing, that is. Using just the tip of our brush to kind of create this nice swirly kind of effect to our rose. And sometimes what happens is I would encourage you to maybe stand up and do this, because it might give you a better idea of how it's looking when you stand up. I'm dipping the tip of my brush in water to kind of smoothen out these edges. And then maybe it's not smooth enough, so I'm just taking the 10 and smoothing it out. I'm going to do another one right there. Getting some more water. I'm going to add another swirly bit here. And I think I've decided that I'm going to have more of these shadowy effects for this rose. See me blending out this stroke because it's too harsh. Just taking the brush and blending it out. More shadowy effects for this rose as I was starting and didn't finish at the bottom. And then I'm just adding a couple around the top, and we're going to take this brush and smoothen it out. Smoothing out these layers. And I'm just adding more darker detail to the center, so then it really does stand out. Okay, and just want to add a little more of this happening here. So this is the stage where it gets a tad bit tricky, and you could take forever just sitting there and kind of shaping this rose and really going for it. And so, yeah, it takes a couple of tries for you to really hone in on how you want your rose to look, or how to kind of create it. So this is the basics, really, of creating a rose. Now I'm doing a lot of detail, and that's just because I cannot stop myself, and that you will kind of find yourself in that situation at some point too. But I encourage you to just go with the flow and figure out, because it's only when you kind of do these exercises that you actually learn what works, what doesn't, and what you like and what you don't. So, the power of practice. Okay, so that's it. I'm not going to do anything else to this rose. We'll now move on to this one right here. And for that, we are mixing some of the cadmium red light with violet. And I'm just going to get some more of that violet, get it in there, get that nice dark purple. Purple, mauve, whatever you want to call it. And let's do this one. So same idea, different rows. Now really, as you're doing these roses, you should really be spacing out how close these strokes go, and then you're not overdoing it like that. If you really want to keep things loose and fun and light. So I'm going to leave this rose looking exactly like this. And so you can see, even someone like me, I can go ahead and, even though this is supposed to be extremely loose, and this is a beginner's class, and I am showing you a lot of different details here, and that's why it might seem overwhelming to you. But now you know the tricks of the trade, and I encourage you to start these techniques right away in your habits, like incorporate these in your habits of creating. But you can see that there's two different ways of doing it, and they both look fairly good. So never kind of feel like there's only one way of doing things. Like there's so much you can learn. You just need to experiment and be a rebel when it comes to trying new things without really thinking that you can't do it right off the bat, like you've not even made an effort. I'm just adding some darker tones to the purple here because that's where it's blending in with that. Great. Okay, so that's that for the roses, and now let's go ahead and create some of the dark petals that I was referring to previously. So for the dark petals, I will use my number 8 again, and we're going to mix, since we didn't use a lot of purple, I'm going to mix the Payne's Gray with purple, with the violet, to get that nice deep color. So it's almost like a dark purple. Okay, too much violet in there. Let's get some more of that Payne's Gray in. There we go. And so now for these these leaves, we're going to do exactly like how we've done the other leaves, just on a smaller scale, because we don't want these to be too overpowering where they just take over everything. And then before we do the leaves, let's just do the center for this. So I'm just doing quick little lines all around, and then a couple of dots at the top of these lines. It's very sporadic, spaced out unevenly, just to kind of get that nice dark center, again, for the flower, right? That kind of really emphasizes the look of it. All right, so now we're moving on to the leaves. So for the leaves, let's plan out where we want them to go. I think it would be nice to have some happening in between, a little bit over here. So remember, they are on a smaller scale, so let's do our little loosey blend of them. So kind of like that, and we just want to give this the shape, have it mimic the shape of the orange or the tangerine. These guys should have been on a lighter, looser scale, but that's okay. This is our first set. Let's go ahead and do some let's do some over here. That leaf is just a bit too big, but that just happened because the weird angle that I was holding this in. I'm doing some overlapping happening here. And giving some movement to my leaves now. Just really fluffing it up. Taking some water and I'm just kind of extending this downward. I'm going to make this looser and lighter so that it doesn't interfere with the green at the bottom. Okay, I'm going to add some of that Lucy detail on here as well. I'm just kind of darkening these guys up just a tad bit. Okay, and then we are going to do some over at the, I was thinking maybe over here, but I think some could also be used over here. And what I'm going to do is just kind of take the shape of this flower bit here to kind of indicate that it's coming out from behind. And then go looser. And then, just like I mentioned previously, you want to darken up the areas like where it's starting, where it's kind of emerging from in the flower, and so you have that gradient. So I just went in there with slightly darker color to kind of give it that look. Getting some more Payne's gray in here because I don't want things to look too purple. I think it'll be cute to even include some, just a little bit here at the bottom. And I think we are almost done. I just feel like there's a couple of key places we need to place this before we can call it quits. Definitely over here, I am thinking. But since these are falling down this way, it would be nice to have some maybe just coming up this way. I'm making this like one big leaf coming out from under the rose. I think that's good there. Mixing a little bit more color because I keep running out. I keep running out of the color. This one seemed to have a little bit more of the purple in it than the Payne's Gray. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Five areas, but I'm not feeling the one at the top too much. So I'm just gonna add some peeking out from under this rose. And then last but not least, I want to add some here. So we've got some kind of peeking out from here, and I'm just going to shut this area up where the two of them meet. The tangerine and the rose. And then we're doing a little bit of that over here. So this kind of extended into another little branch. I wanted to just do like 2 or 3 leaves. And you know, reality is when you're painting loose style and you're kind of just creating your composition on a whim as you go along, this is typically what's going to happen to you. So enjoy this process and learn how to, I guess, roll with the punches as you go along, because that is something that happens quite a bit. There we go. So this is what the end result looks like. You can add a splatter to this, and I think a splatter really helps enhance the nice loose looking style. So feel free to use a green or maybe even the dark color that we have, which is the Payne's Gray and the purple, violet, sorry. So I'll use that because I have a lot of that left. And I'm just going to use the number 8 as my splatter brush, and then the 10 can be the brush that I use to help me get the splatter. So now that I have enough of that and it's nice and thick with water, pulling this down, and I want to determine where I'm putting my splatter. So I definitely want a splatter here, and then I want one here. If you want to cover up the areas of the roses, like if you specifically don't want splatter going in those areas, then I would suggest going ahead and just getting a sheet of paper or something covering up that area before you go in and do your splatter. I'm just kind of using whatever leftover color I have. I'm going to get some on this side, in between the rows here. And then I just want a little bit at the top where the dark leaves are. That's fine, just some here too. Wherever these dark leaves are, I am putting my splatter, essentially. Just a tad bit at the bottom. And that's good enough. So for me, I don't really mind if it gets onto the flowers. I kind of like that natural look. So I didn't really change, cover things up to avoid that. So yep, that's it guys. This is the full composition. I hope you learned a lot. Please make sure that you make a note of this month's homework. If you are attending March, it would be amazing if you could do the homework and just keep track of this progress that you're doing along this journey for yourself. Keep all the sheets and date them as well that you paint, so you can see the progress by the end of this year, or however long you are with me on this journey. Yeah, and so celebrate all the little victories that you have. Please make sure, I know this class mentioned a mini composition. This is by no means a mini composition. This is quite an enhanced composition, and I've given you a lot of information as well. So watch this video several times, practice this several times. Like I mentioned, do the homework as well, and you will most definitely see progress. If you were not familiar with the little strokes, that means you've probably not done the pre-homework or pre-class homework. There's usually 2 videos in the workbook that you need to do before the class, and this will help you warm up and just kind of get better with your strokes. So make sure you're following those as well in the upcoming videos. And that's it, guys. So thank you for watching, and can't wait to see your work.